Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video 242. In defense of Satanism, I'm arguing devil's advocate, you could say here. Because nobody else outside of Satanism appears particularly willing to tackle the concept. They're afraid of the outrage mob of two different groups attacking them, and it's very, very interesting when this happens. Satanism, and paganism along with it, has been attacked as far-right and, like, quasi-Nazi for some time now by the far left. And so if you talk about Satanism openly, you will get people saying, well, it's basically a Nazi cult. I remember there was this commie that I used to argue with years and years ago who had a whole fucking video where there was like this chart she had drawn up that was drawing the line from Karl Marx, not Karl Marx, from the Third Reich all the way up through Anton LaVey, and talking about things that were straight out of the Satanic Panic, but literally the explicit way it was interpreted was to skew it as though Satanism was a far-right, like a pro-capitalistic cult. The only truth there being that the Church of Satan's main document, the Satanic Bible, is largely an adaptation of Ragnar Redbeard's Might is Right into a spiritual manifesto. I'll get into that, by the way, because it's of interest. Then, there are people on the traditionalistic, more what you could argue is right-wing, although it's not a political ideology, people who are more orthodox in their Christian values especially, as well as Islam, I would say, that think that Satanism is the devil, basically. If I had a penny for every time I said, back when I was a Satanist, well, I'm a Satanist. Oh, you worship the devil. If I had a penny for every time some permutation of that was said to me, I could glue them all together and I could replace this armchair with one made entirely out of glued together pennies. It wouldn't be as comfortable, but at least I would get a chuckle every time I wake up in the morning. Then I could start knitting a rug with everyone who tells me in the here and now that I'm no longer a Satanist, oh, well, you're still a Satanist because you haven't embraced Jesus. By the way, the self-righteousness involved with people who talk down to you that way really rubs me the wrong way. It also vaguely reminds me of something else, and this is a little bit off topic, but it bears mentioning. It reminds me of the way people used to refer to it if you, back in the late 90s, 2000s, online or elsewhere. If you said you were in favor of gay people being able to marry or gay equality in any meaningful sense, they'd say, oh, that's because you're gay. They still say that now about Satanism. They speculate that I'm still involved with that particular ideology because I don't have a problem with Satanism. I continue to praise it as what it is, and here's where Ragnar Redbeard formulates in. It is a libertarian, quasi-political system. Satanism is an adaptation of hardline, almost anarcho-capitalist sentiment. It's been tempered. Anton LaVey basically uses the NIP to create the structure of the Satanic Commandments. For example, you cannot harm children. It's explicitly forbidden within the Church of Satan's doctrine. If you're in the Church of Satan and do harm a child, you'll be excommunicated from the Church of Satan. Now, of course, they're a business, above board tax paying, by the way, but they will still kick you out. It's also banned to abuse animals. The only way you can harm an animal is if you intend to eat it. Which is why, they don't force you to become a vegan, I suppose. If they did, maybe that's what they should do. Gilmore should consider this. Force all the members of the Church of Satan to become vegans and become really gung-ho for animal rights. That way, at least the far left will stop calling you a Nazi extremist like they have been for years now. Anton LaVey was far right. Anton LaVey, that dude from the 60s, he cast a destruction spell on the hippie movement, so he must be, Heinrich Himmler as well. Interesting how these things happen. I find it perpetually hilarious when people who don't know anything about the Satanic Panic try to lecture me on it. I've actually spoken to people who were the target of the Satanic Panic. I bothered to speak with people. I've also spoken with people who claim to have been ritualistically abused, and I've never seen any compelling evidence that it happens. When we talk about cult activity, you're not talking about Satanism. You're talking about groups of sickos who may hide behind the trappings of occultism. But is there, imagine it this way. I pointed this out the other day. They said, well, at the preschool tunnels, whatever it was, preschool, there were pentagrams that the archaeologists dug out. And of course, I kind of question that. Let's say that it's true. How do you know it's a satanic pentagram? How do you know that a group of fucking sex-starved Wiccans weren't having orgies underneath the building? There is literally no way to tell. Oh, but there were animal bones there. How do you know they were used within a ritualistic setting? How do you know that some fucking hobos, fucking high on meth, didn't draw a pentagram under there as simple graffiti to scare people if they found their drug stash, and they were fucking eating things and dumping the bones in the tunnel? I don't know, because there's no way for me to actually be able to tell. Now, again, that's arguing devil's advocate. I'm not stressing that that's what I believe. Of course, there was probably some crazy cult behavior actually going on there and elsewhere. But did it involve Satanists in the doctrinal sense? No. Not in the sense that would be accepted by the COS or any similar group. If you look through the rules of these groups, you'll find that I think all of them ban any form of child or animal abuse. And that would be like, and some people are saying, well, that doesn't mean they can't be self-proclaimed Satanists. Of course not. I'm not saying that. But that would be like saying that Christianity is responsible for a self-proclaimed Christian doing crazy shit that's banned in the Bible. If they're doing something that is explicitly banned by a dogma, they can't claim to be a card-carrying member of that dogma, and other people who have a problem with that dogma, including ones that I myself do, like Christianity, they can't attack that dogma by saying, look, this is a great example of a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Jew because of the things that they were doing in the name of some deity. Well, if no dogma accepts it, then that's not the modern interpretation. It's even like, and I've seen this among some people who are more like atheistic or whatever. They'll attack Christianity based on what happened to the Catholic Church in 500 AD, and they'll be talking about some church that was founded in the 1800s. There's a difference. They're not even the same fundamentally. There's a similarity of the religious dogma, but it's not exactly the same. It's a dishonest attack on Christianity. Back when I was an atheist, I used to admonish people, read the Bible if you want to be a better atheist. It was a very funny time. I'm not atheistic now, but was then. Satanism, by the way, the idea that it contains an element of devil worship. Only if you're a fundamentalist Christian would you interpret it that way. It's actually spiritually empty. That's literally why I'm no longer a Satanist. When I first started looking into it, I expected it to be, oh, there's an actual Satan there. There's like spooky stuff going on, at least the paranormal. Give me something to work with. Instead, I found it was a bunch of ritualistic psychodrama. It got boring after a while. I used it as a springboard. I said, fundamentally, the doctrine is good. This is also the birth of me as a more libertarian individual. This is post the era when I voted for Obama the first time, but pre-Ron Paul. Yeah, Ron Paul would make a good Satanist, arguably, if he wasn't a religious Christian, so to speak. It doesn't mean that you do crazy things. It just means that you expect to be left alone. It's essentially nothing more than a quasi-spiritualist version of the NAP. That's what Satanism boils down to in the legitimate sense. That represents legitimate Satanism. Now, if you want to talk about devil-worshipping cults, I've spoken with people who are part of cults that are among the most extreme you could possibly imagine. I've been shown cult materials by groups that I'm sure are under surveillance because of their literature. It doesn't end with the Temple of Blood sort of stuff. I can remember, what was it? There was some literal cult years ago that sent me some paperwork, and it was all like, it was some sort of chaos magic cult. I think it's defunct now. It was only ever a few people doing this, but they sent me their literature printed out at one point, and I can't even remember the name of it. I remember it was obscene, and it was basically all about how the divine whore gave birth to existence and everything is a mistake and we should meditate our way back into hate-filled chaotic bubbles and sort of dissolve existence or something. And this was legit stuff. Like, this was a literal chaos magic system that's actually adhered to. Now, nowhere did they say, well, we're going to do this by killing or maiming or sacrificing animals or anything like that, but it's some weird shit. This is actually believed in, but it's not Satanism. It wouldn't be recognized as Satanism by people who consider themselves legitimate card-carrying Satanists of any satanic order or their independent offshoots. For instance, I was an independent Satanist. I never joined the COS, the TOS, any of the Reformed Church of whatever. I was never a member of any of these groups. I was always only independently studying these things. But having spoken with people who were members of these groups, I never got the vibe that any of them were involved in weird shit. I just never, you know how sometimes you can talk to someone and you could tell that they're fucking psycho or something? I never got that vibe from anyone. In fact, I remember one, as an anecdote here, one particular early group that was like prevalent on YouTube and was, I think, meeting more in cyberspace than anything else at the time. The Satanic Empire, I can't remember, I think it was Canadian-based if I remember correctly. One of its founders actually excommunicated the other for abusing children. I can remember he had a tearful video about it and how terrible it was at the time. And I knew this dude fairly well. We had spoken a number of times. He was genuine about, I think he's dead by now, unfortunately. He had poor health towards the end of his life. I'm assuming by now he's incapacitated in some degree. But, I mean, he excommunicated the dude. The dude was the other founding member of this movement, and he said, no, you can't legitimately be a member because you're violating explicitly one of the main commands of it. And it was similar. It was sort of a carbon copy of the Church of Satan in regards to those rules. Another part of it was a little bit more hail Satan, hail thyself, a little bit more sarcastic and a little bit more strictly anti-Christian. Not activistic, but just like shitposting on the internet. It was amusing for a while, but again, I had to get past these things. I'm not a member of them. I made it clear, I think a few months ago I made an occult video saying I'm not a Satanist, but I'm still fundamentally satanic. Well, yeah, I'm a libertarian. There's no other way to actually put it. The idea of the archetype of sort of the fallen rebel fits in pretty well, the sort of Promethean spirit. You can call that fedora or cringe all you want. It's just a symbol. It's no different than the symbol of Christ as the liberator of man from darkness or degeneracy. It's the same sort of trope. It's just a symbol, though. I mean, I never believed in a devil, and I don't believe in a devil now. I think the idea is ludicrous. If the idea is that I should limit my attainment of knowledge for fear of running across some ancient tome that corrupts me and makes me go to hell, I can't do that because I want to read that ancient tome. Whether it makes me go to hell or not, it's probably still a good book. And I would frown upon any deity that thought that knowledge was a bad thing. The idea that knowledge, that wisdom is bad and wrong, I don't know, I can't really get behind it. That's about all. Peace out.